Since my beloved Manchester United are going to get thrashed by Brighton today, I thought I'd tell you all a little bit about the connection between Brighton, the place, and the Indian army that fought in the First World War. This story is also related to the tale of eventual deserter Mir Dast, whom I talked about in my last reel. So, soldiers who were wounded at the front were taken to hospitals at the front. That would make a lot of sense. But there were obviously some soldiers who needed a little bit more care and recovery time. And so Brighton Pavilion was converted into a hospital for Indian soldiers who were injured during the war in 1914 and 1915. It was originally built as a pleasure palace for King George IV, and in 1815 John Nash was commissioned as the architect, and that's also when it got its iconic minarets and the rest of its Oriental style. The facilities and the care the soldiers received over here was top-notch, thanks in no small part to the Indian Soldiers Fund, which would send across magazines, books, board games, cricket bats and balls, all kinds of things like that. Our old friend Mir Dast was over here as well, and this is where he received his Victoria Cross from King George V. He wrote positively of the place and noted that all religious beliefs were being accommodated by the British government. In fact, the British had set up customary cookhouses for both the Hindu soldiers and Muslim soldiers to accommodate dietary preferences. Despite the low rate of mortality at the Brighton Pavilion, the British government had also arranged for funeral and burial rites to be done according to Hindu traditions and Muslim customs. A crematorium was set up at Patcham Downs, whereas Muslim burials were done at the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking. All of this was done by the British government to ensure that they got a favourable mention, particularly in the correspondence's home by the soldiers who were recuperating there. Despite all of the facilities that were provided by the British government, some of them felt more like prisoners rather than patients. In fact, a Gurkha soldier said that they were more like pigs in a yard and complained that they weren't able to interact with any of the English people. This was because the British government wanted to make sure that there was
no touchy-touchy, no rubby-rubby patty, and no looky-looky touchy.
There were more grievances, of course. Chief among them was that the pre-war tradition of sending lightly wounded soldiers home had been discontinued. This policy was probably discontinued due to the fact that the British government wanted to clamp down on self-inflicted wounds. Soldiers were also apprehensive about going back to their regiments in the front, where they may be met with unfamiliar officers who might not know the standing of that particular soldier in the regiment and might hand out promotions and other favors to casualty replacements. As if this wasn't enough, correspondences from back home would also bring horrible news of things that would happen to their family and loved ones, including epidemics, plague, land problems, infidelity, and more. Not to mention that the only thing they had to look forward to after they got discharged from Brighton Pavilion was to go back to one of the most horrific theatres of modern warfare of all time. Now you know that in addition to having a well-run football team, Brighton also has a small connection to India's past.